this meeting and public defender to order. First order of business, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Motion by Supervisor Gerard, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, they carry. First up today, Marcy, you're on deck.
These are my papers. I don't know if anybody needs a copy. Sorry. I'm just passing down. Thank you very much. I have several things. The first one is a request to extend 3 contracts with our Office of Indigent Legal Services contracts. They all have expiration dates coming up. Contract C-252, that expired in November. Before we had made a request to have it extended. I still have not heard back from the state on it. So at this point I'm asking to extend it for a full year to this coming November because we had funds we didn't use. Contract, the second one is C-352. That one expires on May 31st, so I'm asking to extend it for another year because we haven't used all the funding. And the third one is contract C-652. That expires on December 31st. We will not have used all the funds, so I'd like to extend that for a full year. So that's the first item, is to extend 3 contracts, all state funding, funds we haven't used and we want to use them up.
Motion by Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Gerard. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That one carries. Go on to number 2.
Okay, number 2 is to move money from our Indigent Legal Services budget into the correct category to pay for the cell phones. Apparently, it was originally under data entry and data fees, and apparently that's wrong. So now it is supposed to now go under phones. But you need to understand that we previously paid it under the data fees, which is where we had the funds originally. So now the county wants us to move it into phones, so it is just to move money that is from the grant to pay for the cell phones into the phone category.
Motion by Supervisor Montesi, seconded by Supervisor Raymer. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that they don't get it if it's in the wrong line.
Well, I don't think we want to hold them accountable for the budget. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries.
Okay, number 3, I have my newest attorney, Anna Besson, would like to attend a continuing legal education. It is a trial advocacy course, starting from the start of a trial to the end of a trial, including appellate work. It is held in Troy. It costs $1,700. We have grant money to pay for the entire thing, so I'd like permission for her to travel to Troy to go to the conference and to use the 100% funded oils money to pay for it.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Frazier, second by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries.
That's everything. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Fast.
You want to go?
She's got stuff to do.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Kevin, for having afternoon meetings. You have no idea how important this is. Short and sweet as last time. Resolution request to pay out retention salary for Oils Grant Contract 252. Forward to Finance, Personal, and Higher Education Committee for further action and approval and adjust budget accordingly. This is the last payout for this department from that grant and is fully refundable to Warren County.
Okay, do we have a motion to get it on the floor? Supervisor Gerard, do we have a second? Supervisor Bramer, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
As long as we're cruising right along. Kate, do you want to go next?
How fast?
I'll tell you, Lou Tessier would be thrilled with how fast this is moving. I have 2 things for you. And Amanda, I have your copies. Thank you. I haven't appeared before the committee in the new configuration with all the members, so it's a pleasure to see all of you here. My 6th ADA, Maggie Place, has just notified me that she is submitting her resignation. There's extenuating circumstances with a family member and their health situation. So my first resolution before this committee is permission to fill the 6th ADA position. Obviously, we have that already budgeted.
Motion by Supervisor Gerard, second by Supervisor Simpson. Was that a hand I saw? Okay. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Now, the second issue I have before the court is permission to host a meeting. The sheriff and I were in Warrensburg last night with a hometown versus heroin panel. I was just speaking with Mayor Blaze. We were in Lake George. I was in Lake George the night before St. Patrick's and St. Patrick's morning. We are getting inundated with heroin, and it's affecting everybody. Everyone knows some family that has an addicted person. What we're trying to do from a law enforcement perspective is do two things. We're trying to stop the supply by coordinating efforts with New York City, and we're trying to reduce the demand by making sure that everyone who's addicted is getting treatment to the extent that we can provide it to them. This meeting is it is inviting the Special Narcotics Prosecutor for the City of New York, Bridget Brennan. She has assembled a team of prosecutors and investigators who are working specifically on this New York, upstate New York connection. We're the first area to have a hands-on meeting between the investigators in New York and the investigators up here. And the sheriff has been kind enough to allow us to use his training room. The meeting will be on April 5th from 11 to 1. And I have reached out to DA Tony Jordan and DA Karen Hagan. They are each coming because remember, there's no Chinese wall between South Glens Falls and Glens Falls or Hudson Falls and Glens Falls. So the dealers that are selling out of the Clearview and Saratoga County are coming over to Glens Falls and vice versa with Hudson Falls. So it's a tri-county approach, and it will be at the sheriff's training room on April 5th, 11 to 1. I am asking permission to be able to supply lunch, and I am estimating $650, although I think it'll be come in much lower than that. And there'll be at least 65 to 75 members of law enforcement.
Okay, that seems like a very good idea.
Can the board members go?
Actually, I'm happy to have a briefing for you either before or after, but we will be talking about law enforcement techniques and information that I think needs to be kept confidential. But if you are interested in a briefing, let me know and I'll arrange for that. Any of the board members, I'm happy to discuss with you exactly what we're trying to do and the tools that we have. We're very lucky in that we have a lot of collaboration with New York, and that's where this heroin is coming from. So I'm tired of being George Jetson on a treadmill. I want to knock off the big suppliers so that you can knock off 4 or 5 dealers here, but they're just replaced by 4 or 5 dealers there. And I need to knock off the kingpin down in New York.
Yep. Okay, we have a motion to authorize this. Motion by Supervisor Montesi, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Kate.
Thought
Skip
maybe
around
you
for a
wanted
little
to
bit.
learn the
We're going to
technique.
the sheriff's office next.
Before the undersheriff starts, and going on what Kate just said, the meeting we had last night on the heroin problem, I got some statistics that were kind of scary that I wasn't aware of. And in 2001, nationwide, there were less than 2,000 heroin overdose deaths. Less than 2,000. In 2014, there were over 10,000. So that should give you an inkling of the problem that it's become over the last 12 to 14 years.
And that's with the use of Narcan that brings a lot of people back from overdose deaths.
Right.
Sean? Sean, could we get a couple up here?
Yep.
Thank you. One for me and one for her. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready whenever you are, Sean.
You good to go?
Okay.
We have a relatively short agenda today. Request a resolution for a new 5-year contract with New York State Department of Corrections, Community Supervision Office, and Nutritional Services to provide food to the Warren County Correctional Facility. Contract is going to be on file with the County Attorney's Office.
Do we have a motion? Supervisor Gerard, seconded by Supervisor Montesi. Any discussion? Supervisor Vanslo?
Will that be including dessert?
No, it will not.
I actually did inquire what types of foods. We get cold cuts and a bunch of other foods that we just have to warm up to serve to the inmates.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Item B is request permission to have investigator Terry Jeffords attend the Bivona Child Abuse Summit, April 27th through the 29th of this year, which is held in Rochester, New York.
Okay, do we have a motion? Anywhere out there? Supervisor Seaver, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And it carries.
Item C is request permission to have Systems Maintenance Coordinator Mark Neal attend the Office of Interoperable Emergency Communications Conference, March 29th through the 30th, 2016, which is held out in Oriskany, New York.
Motion to get it on the floor. Supervisor Montesi, second. Supervisor Frazier, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And it carries.
Item D is a notice of intent to fill a vacant position with the retirement of patrol officer Cindy Bapp, who's been with us for quite a few years, is retiring the end of this month, and we're seeking to replace that position. There'll be a cost savings of $14,623 with her replacement.
Do we have a motion? Supervisor Montesi, second by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And it carries.
Notice of intent to fill a vacant position. We had a communication officer that had transferred up and consolidated the dispatching with Glens Falls. He retired as of this past Friday due to ongoing illness.
Do we have a motion? Supervisor Frazier, we have a second. Supervisor Simpson, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Do you have anything else this morning? I can bring that up now, Sean, if
Municipal Center?
Yep, the Municipal Center. There's been some conversation, and the chairman is here. The chairman had brought to our attention that in the Human Services building, there's a sign-in book for folks that go in and out of the building. We don't necessarily do that downstairs. I spoke to Sean and the chairman about it, and essentially it would involve moving the desk by DMV back a little bit and putting in a sign-in book so that when people are going further into the building, we have a record of who went in and, you know, if they ever came back out. I think that about covers it, Chairman. Is there
Yeah,
anything?
it's just that I thought it was, you know, people can walk these halls down there, they can go past the security desk, and if they don't go to county clerk or they don't go to DMV, they're enrollment free here. We don't put visitor badges on them or anything, and they can be enrollment free, and I just thought a sign in, and that would help in case of evacuation too, to know that we need to go look for different people that may be in different departments. It's gonna be shut off, it'll be a limited space, and I don't think it'll be that big a deal for the security officers to move that.
It'd be a matter of consistency too amongst our buildings. We'd ask for committee approval to move ahead with that. Motion by Supervisor Vanslo, seconded by Supervisor McDonald. Any discussion? Supervisor Sieber?
Perhaps it needs to wait for a moment. I just have a discussion-related item. We spoke previously about the possibility of a magnetometer. Do you want me to wait?
No, we can do it right now. That's
Okay.
fine. Go ahead.
Thank you. We talked briefly last year about this, and it was shot down pretty quickly, and it was upon the advice of Amy's office and Needham, correct?
Correct.
And they had come to the board and said the recommendation was that we really consider a magnetometer in that entrance. And I applaud the efforts we've made in our key fobs and being at the sign-in book. All those things are great, but I think around the country we're continuing to see violence, and particularly within municipalities. And I just don't know if skimming over that as quickly as we have in the past, perhaps there'd be some interest. We have a new board, new circumstances. We've certainly listened to some of the recommendations, but I think we're making a mistake not listening to the recommendation of both Amy's office and Needham, and perhaps we could have another discussion about it.
We certainly could. I know Sean and I had discussed the potential about a magnetometer, but I think one of the things that needs to be looked at right now is budget-wise. Do we have the money anywhere to get a magnetometer? What was it gonna cost? It could always be installed, and certainly we could pursue that and come back to the committee with a better idea of what the costs are. And certainly we can install one at any time, that the committee gives authorization and goes to the board. So I don't think it's necessarily a dead in the water, and I certainly think we take the advice given to us seriously, but it'll be something we're gonna have to, I think, look at a little further, just so we know the cost. I don't know that the sheriff's budget has expenses for a magnetometer in there anywhere.
Not at this point. I can tell you that I've been in touch with the Office of Court Administration, and they had donated a magnetometer to us last year, and I think that option would be available to us as they move forward with the court project, that they might be able to help us out.
It's a good suggestion. We may be able to dovetail it in so that as we proceed with the courts, we could simply move it over here, and maybe that will be a more budget-neutral option for the future.
Well, and I know previously we did have a letter, I think, put in actually Mr. LaFleur's file for his cooperation and quick thinking when, didn't we grab a magnetometer that was going to be disposed of? And maybe that's the one, is that the one you're referring to, Sean?
It came over
that
last
ended
year.
up, yeah. So maybe approaching them ahead of the gate this time and saying, as you go to dispose of these, we really, if the board is so inclined, could add a little bit more of a stepped-up security measure, especially DMV. I mean, people get so upset as it relates to their taxes and to DMV, but I think it's fair to say we've had some heated discussions up at the Board of Supervisors. We talked about it at NIPAC, and certainly is a safety concern, and I know across the hall there at Social Services, they collect quite a few really interesting objects that go through magnetometers.
Okay, so we'll continue. Mr. McDevitt.
Yeah, I would like to express an opposite perspective as it relates to the Spectro machine. I don't like the idea. The signing sheet makes sense to me. We have the ability to account for human beings that have gotten in there. This is a situation where the average taxpayer from all over this county, all they want to do is come in and register their automobile. I think it goes too far. I think it basically is a little bit of us against them type situation, and I don't like the idea. I don't consider the situation here to be unsafe. We have a guard there. We'll have a sign-in sheet, and I don't see this problem.
Okay, thank you. So for right now, why don't we look at the sign-in sheet as the chairman's proposed, and then we can certainly vet this a little further regarding the magnetometer and see what's available. Perhaps as the court moves forward, the board will want to do that, but certainly I wouldn't say the discussion is dead. We'll simply implement these measures now maybe and look into the future.
Would it be appropriate to ask that it just remain on a pending item?
We can put it on as a pending item. That's not an issue. Supervisor Thomas?
What happens if somebody signs in and goes out another door? How you gonna know if they lost it?
Won't know.
What's with the book?
I don't think we will know.
Never know.
It's not too far. I mean, the taxpayers pay for this building, pay our salaries, and it's like they don't want it being closed.
All right, so do we have a motion and a second to go ahead with the sign-in book for now, and we will put the magnetometer on as a pending item. Supervisor McDonald and Supervisor Brock, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. And Brian informs me that we will need an executive session for pending litigation regarding a lawsuit against the county.
Before we leave the sheriff,
Certainly.
Did you want to discuss the letter that I sent to the mayor?
It did go out to all of the supervisors. We had it sent out to the entire board. Is there anybody here that has something for the sheriff or questions for the sheriff regarding that letter that was forwarded out before we go into executive?
Which letter are we talking about?
Yes.
The letter responding to Mayor Diamond's request for information.
Did you get a response?
No.
That's all
Can I-
I know.
Supervisor Brock?
Well, I wanna talk about something else, but, not
Alright.
about
Let's just deal with this
that.
this one
I
matter.
don't, Kate's leaving.
Oh, okay, we'll get Kate before she goes. Hold on just a second. Anybody else for the sheriff?
The only other question I
Supervisor
have,
Montesi.
did I read it correctly that, what the treasurer's report, that, on a positive vein, that we have an increase in revenue in the jail? Year to date?
I believe so, yes.
Well, that's pretty good news.
Yeah, Rob puts out those quarterly, and they're pretty close.
Okay. Supervisor Brock, did you have something for DA Hogan?
Well, both the sheriff and Jake Hogan, I don't have a feeling, I don't think I really I mean, I've looked at heroin problems and all that, but I don't really have a sense of the real understanding of it as it relates to our community. And I don't know how we would do it exactly, except wider and deeper kind of thing maybe, or, you know, something that gives us a better detailed understanding of it, or.
If you want a comprehensive
Right.
presentation that lays out for you from A to Z what we're addressing with heroin,
Right.
we are happy to provide that. And in fact, we can do it, you know, I would defer to the chairwoman as to whether it should be this committee or the full board.
Probably the full board.
Yeah, that's what I would think. And what I think would be very beneficial is for you to hear, you know, I always think it's most compelling to hear from the victim at the time of sentencing because he or she is the person who went through it. What we're doing with these heroin forums are we're having people who were actually addicted and are now in recovery speaking. And when you hear the progression, it comes in all different forms, but there's several commonalities. So we can bring 2 or 3 of those people forward so you can hear the different avenues of how they became an IV heroin addict. But that's an incredibly difficult place to be in, and how they get out of it is something we all want to be aware of and supportive of. And then there's parents that have gone through it, and I can have parents who will talk about what happened during the course of their parenting that they may have done differently, and then resources, and then we can have law enforcement talk about what they're doing in terms of strategies.
Well, the other thing would be the therapy, you know, where do they go for help, or what do we offer?
So what we're doing is we're working with the Council for Prevention, and Amanda West, who's the Deputy Director, has been a great partner there. And what we did was we did a compilation, and we have this card that we leave at all of our presentations. And that card is one-stop shopping. So I'll reach out to Council for Prevention. I'll have a number of those brought up, and all the materials that we put together at each of these events. I'll make sure that there's a package for each supervisor. But then I'll wait to hear from you. You
Sure.
give me a date.
I will speak with the chairman and we'll see what we can set up.
You give me a date, and we will be spit shine ready to go.
Okay, that's excellent. Supervisor Brock, did you have something
And
else?
the one other thing is, our recovery, you know, facilities up to the task, or are we gonna need more? You know, that kind of thing,
I
how
think-
adequate are we for the?
Karen Hagan, when I was speaking with her this morning, she said the only word I can use to describe this is a crisis. And I think that when there is a crisis, there's always opportunities for different collaborations. So before this was at the level it was, I don't know if you would have necessarily seen the treatment providers working with such collaboration. We have great resources in our communities. Is it hard to get, if you're addicted, one woman I spoke to last night, she was seated in the front row. She cried through the entire presentation. What I learned afterwards, speaking to her mother's originally from Lake George. They live in Saratoga County now. This is a girl who just turned 20 years old. She was using heroin from the age of 13 till the time she went into state prison at 19. She had a 1 to 3 bid. She just got out of Albion. So she's been not using for a year because she was incarcerated in state prison, and they're struggling to get a structure in place for her so that she can stay clean and sober. Those are the challenges that we have. Detox centers are always hard to find. We don't have a detox center in our community, and as we heard last night, the Warren County Jail is where a lot of people detox. But I've spoken to a lot of people who are clean and sober who say those hours in the jail when I was vomiting and defecating in the cell are the most precious to me in my life, because I will always remember that and I don't want to go back to it. So do we need more resources? Probably. Where is the best use of those resources? That'll take a lot of discussion among all of us. But right now, I just want to make sure that we're all rolling up our sleeves and using everything we have now. We have the special narcotics prosecutor in New York, and we need to make sure we're using them so that we get the bigger fish and not be George Jetson on a treadmill. Because I'm getting tired.
Yeah, please don't make light of this, but I think if we could agree on that June 16th meeting at night would be a good time to convene the board and convene the public to come that night to try to listen to this thing. And didn't I just read in the paper, didn't Hudson Headwaters just receive some money to start to work on this?
Yeah, well, they got Suboxone grant, and Suboxone is a controversial drug because it has a street value. So we are prosecuting a lot of people who get the Suboxone grant for a legitimate clinical purpose of diminishing their craving for heroin. But instead of using it for that legitimate purpose, they're selling it on the street and making money. So that's a very controversial.
Kate, how long a meeting do you envision this being? Because, I was hoping we would do it separately, but I like the chairman's idea of a night meeting, but 2-3 hours?
Last night we started at 6:30.
We were almost 2 hours last night.
Okay, so, that's something we gotta consider with the regular business of our monthly meeting, to throw this on top of it.
Listen, what I'm surprised by, Tuesday night in Lake George, it was rainy and cold. If there's any night when you go home and you don't want to go back out, it's a rainy, cold night. Tuesday night at Lake George School, the place was packed. I think that there's a real need in our community. I think that families are suffering. I think that they feel isolated. And what we're trying to do is reduce the stigma. And none of us should be pointing fingers at any family that's going through this. They aren't bad parents. This is something that is crossing every socioeconomic strata, and families are struggling. And even families that have the resources to put their child in treatment aren't necessarily meeting with success. And it's just a very, very tough situation.
Okay, Supervisor Simpson.
Is there anything being done or changed for the connection between prescription painkillers and then the progression to heroin?
Yes.
Because that seems to be a
There is the e-stop program, is the electronic prescription program. So last night, Josh is one of the people who's in recovery, and he talked about doctor shopping, going from doctor to doctor to doctor, and just making up pain so that he could get more of the prescription drugs, which he readily admitted he never took properly. He always took them and was always abusing them. That is now stopped because we have electronic prescriptions. So doctors will see exactly when they're putting your name, date of birth in and your social, they already see that you have a script. The other thing that is coming in, and I don't know whether it's a regulation or a statute, but they are limiting, the proposal is that they limit the opiate prescription for 3 days, so that you don't have the fractured collarbone and the 14-year-old getting 50 Oxycontin or oxycodone. And they're trying to encourage alternatives, Tylenol and ice, those types of treatments. A lot of this, you hearken back to the American Medical Association in the 80s, and you remember that we never had the smiley faces in the ER, what's your pain level? People knew that when you had a broken arm, it hurt. And there was a level of, well, you're just going to suck it up and toughen up and take it, cupcake, and that was the attitude. And I'm not pointing a finger at the medical community, because other than dirty docs, every addict we've spoken to says, I was abusing this prescription. I wasn't taking it the way I was supposed to.
Yeah, make no mistake about it. They get this, especially this young guy that comes with Kate a lot. He's just an outstanding individual who's had some really rough times. He did the marijuana and the alcohol just like a lot of kids do in school. He never got on the heroin until he had back pain, and he was prescribed these opiates. The opiates he got addicted to them, and they weren't doing enough, so he went to sniffing heroin, and that wasn't enough, and then he went into mainlining heroin. That's how it happens. It goes from opiates to heroin, just like that. And the opiates is a short-lived.
But he said, I never took the medicine the way it was intended.
Right.
I abused it immediately. He abused every drug he took. And so there's that component to it as well.
Okay, briefly, Supervisor Seaver?
I want to support the chairman's idea of having this type of a presentation during one of our regular board meetings. I know it means a little bit more time, but the one thing that we've been fortunate to have is the sponsorship from TV8. I think that we would really reach a lot of people at home. Of course, being aware, whoever comes with you in terms of speakers would want to know that that is something that is broadcasted. But I think in terms of a public service, that could provide a lot of information
Certainly.
to people at home.
Quickly, Claudia, did you have something?
I have a different issue I just wanted to raise quickly.
Can it wait till after the executive?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, it has to do with the sheriff.
Oh, in that case, let's do it.
Okay.
Note it down. Go ahead.
Thanks.
But not me.
Not you.
But not you. You're
Okay.
free, Kate. Thank you.
So my assignment, I'm going to get the packets all the information that we hand out at the table.
Mhm.
I will make sure that I get it individually, enough sent for every board member, with extra because we can have it as a public service up by the office.
Certainly.
And then you tell me the date, and we'll make sure that we
We
have
will get in
everyone.
touch with you and let you know what we settle on.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for having me.
Claudia?
Yes, just quickly, and I apologize for not raising this with you personally beforehand, so don't feel like you have to respond, but there was
No problem.
some constituents on Friday, with the snafu of notifying schools of the emergency downtown, and that there was miscommunication between the city police. So I wanna make sure that that doesn't fall through the cracks and that we look at that and how we're gonna make sure that, all of our children are safe.
Yeah, and I responded to that. I don't know if you got a chance to read the letter that I sent out. Don, did you put it on your webpage? Don, I sent out a letter, was that Monday? And I spoke to the chief, spoke to the undersheriff.
Okay.
And it is a police problem that we need to get fixed. And I think it's getting fixed. Somebody had to take the bull by the horns. I did that. I said, I'll take responsibility for that, because when you have an incident like that, remember, sometimes the state police respond, and they're doing their thing. Sometimes the Glens Falls police, go and they do their thing, and sometimes we go and we do our thing. What I want, and in this letter, it's self-explanatory, it's on our webpage, I put it on my webpage.
Okay, I'm sorry for not, I didn't know.
But that's okay, I'm glad you asked it, that's a great question, and all the parents can go and read it. We're not passing the buck, we're saying we think we've got it fixed, we think we've got a way to fix it. I'm gonna make sure that the commanders in the state police, Glens Falls, are already on board, the chief's already on board, to know what our protocols are at the communication center, because ultimately, it's the communication center that gets the information out to the public. We just need to know at the communication center, when do you need those messages sent out? And we can do that. We can pinpoint where we send the emergency response out to. We have that capability. We have state-of-the-art information that we can do. So getting that protocol, I'm taking that on. I think we're gonna get it fixed. And also for a lot of these notifications that we can send out via the phone, a lot of them are landline, hard lines, and probably 60% of phone carriers now are all cellular phone. We are working on an app, and Mike Coleman is working on it, whether it's the sheriff's app, then anybody can have it, whether you're in Washington County, Saratoga County, Warren County, where if you have the sheriff's app, we'll be able to send these push notifications out when something like this happens, when you're walking down the city of Glens Falls, you get this push out, hey, there's a guy running through the streets, watch out for him. So we think we got a good handle on it. Please go to the website, please read the letter that I sent. I think we've got it fixed and we're working on it.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Yeah.
All right. Now we've come full circle, I hope. So we were looking earlier for a motion to go into executive session to discuss pending litigation,
Sheriff?
against the county.
Sheriff?
Yep, I'm sorry.
I think Brian.
To discuss a pending case
Oh, you want me in
settlement.
here?
Yep.
Do you mind?
Okay.
Thank you.
It's a potential settlement, so I'd ask for a motion to go into executive session. Supervisor Frazier, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're going into executive session.
I can't make the meeting on the
Session? no action was taken in executive session, and at this point, I'd like to ask the committee for authorization to, you want this to be settle or compromise the claim? Compromise the claim, regarding Russo versus Warren County, and authorizing the county attorney to take the steps necessary. Motion by Supervisor Montesi, second by Supervisor Bramer. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Sheriff, was there anything else?
I didn't have any.
Okay, just wanted to check before we moved on. Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. I just have a quick issue as it relates to the sheriff as well as going into our support services meeting. I know that we have something in between, but if you could just bear with me for one moment. I saw on the agendas that were coming out that there was a discussion about paying a company, renewing a contract, I believe, for background investigations for new employees or rehires or whatever it may be. And I had inquired with the sheriff's office to see if that's something they would be capable of doing for us, instead of paying that out to a separate entity. And I don't know if there's an opportunity to explore that option. I know the sheriff has conveyed to me that they have a part-time individual who's doing it with pistol permits and rehires now with the sheriff's office, but it may be fiscally beneficial to the county to just talk about making that employee full-time instead of paying out and doing our background investigations in-house.
We can look at it. I know at the time that that contract originally started, that was looked at the first time. We can go back and research why we didn't take that track the first time, because the sheriff has always offered to do the background checks, but if I remember correctly, there was something with some of these background checks that we did in addition to what the sheriff did, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but we'll be happy to go back and have a look at that, though, Supervisor Sieber, and maybe even Paul can be brought in, because I know he was part of that originally as well, and he may remember. But I would send that over to Ron Vanslow in Support Services. I think it's on your agenda, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
Very good. So I'm going to turn that right over to you.
Okay, then you gotta get up.
No, when we get to Support
know.
Services.
He's power hungry.
He is, but that's okay. It's after lunch. He didn't get dessert. All right.
I'm
With that in
sorry.
mind, we'll move over to Emergency Services. Thank you, Sheriff.
Amazing.
Just lovely.
Just take one.
Thank you.
Three pieces each one.
Oh, yeah. I know.
Oh, I didn't get the third one.
You got 'em. One.
Oh, okay. I'm all set, man. I don't know why you're messing with me.
Can't be out, I'm just letting you know.
Dan, I think,
Is it doing good?
Maybe you have one for me.
1, 2, 3.
Which is a good plan.
Do I have it or what?
Third. Okay, thank you.
Brian, can we get some down, the agendas and things down here for the head table?
Executive law,
Thanks, Amy.
They're coming, but slowly.
That's okay. As long as they get here, that's all that counts.
I think I got it.
One
Good
packet
luck.
has 3 pages, 2 pages and a stapled section.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Brian.
Thank you, Supervisor Wood. The first item that I have is a resolution request so that we can set up a contract with Moran's Scuba Center for maintenance of our scuba equipment that we use for our dive team.
I'll move it.
Motion by Supervisor Gerard. Do we have a second? Supervisor Frazier. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries.
No pending items, I will turn it over to Deputy Director Hirsch.
Thank you. So, we're going to discuss today a summary of New York State Executive Law Article 2B. This is in response to a tabletop exercise we did in Lake Placid last September with the 7-county hazmat consortium. Very often over the years you've heard me mention Article 2B because this is the legislation that allows those of you who are chief executive officials in the room to do a state of emergency and any emergency orders. That's just one small portion of this law. It's 25 pages long. The big handout that you have there has the entire law there. And then we have a summary, which is just a double-sided piece of paper. So, I want to start out by saying this. I am not a lawyer. I am not going to give you legal advice. We have at least one lawyer in the room right now. If you have questions regarding this summary, please write them down and go to your council, whether it's the city, the village, town, whomever you have, ask them their interpretation of the law. Okay? It's not for me to interpret the law. This summary that I put here, you'll see that a lot of it is quoted word for word. It just gives the brief highlights of what is in this law. I know you guys are really busy and you don't have time to read 25 pages. Please give it to your legal counsel, though. Have them read it. Have them be familiar with it before you have a disaster in your town or your city or your village, so that they're very comfortable. If there's anything you want to work out, you can work that out ahead of time. If you have any questions about it, if they have any questions, I can put them in contact with the State Office of Emergency Management's legal counsel. That person actually penned part of the revisions, the last set of revisions. So, and she was also the person who looked at the summary and said that this is not giving legal advice. So I'm a little covered here.
The only question I have is, and I sat through your dissertation when we were at the town of Queensbury, is at what point does the executive officer for a town turn it over to the county or the state?
Turn what over?
Well, I can't handle the disaster response anymore. I mean, I'm just a small town, and I think it's beyond me.
As soon as you say that or you think that, you can either request for additional resources, or usually people don't turn over the response. It's usually asking for additional resources. I want the county to come in and help. I need state resources, or I have a specific issue or a project that objective that I'm trying to do at this point in time, and I need a generator, I need a backhoe, I need something specific. And almost every town is asked at one point in time or another for help.
My policy is if I don't have an answer to a question, I'm calling Amy. Got her number on speed dial.
And of course, you always can call our office anytime, day or night, and a lot of you already have done that. Okay, so we're just going to jump right into this. Section 20 is just the policy and definitions. Section 21. And so you know how I picked things out that I thought were specifically relevant to our county, to each of you. Okay? So Section 21 talks about the State Disaster Preparedness Commission. I thought it was kind of important to talk about the fact that they, as the committee, the DPC, can create a temporary organization in the disaster area to provide integration and coordination. So they can come right in and create something. That's what it's saying here, to help you out if they don't think that you're handling it on your own. And the state's not going to be liable for any of those expenses that are incurred using a third party. That's all going to come back on us as the locals. Okay? The subsection 3I3, the DPC submits to the governor an annual report, including the status of local plans for disaster preparedness and response, naming those who have failed or refused to develop a plan or a program. Section 22 is the state disaster preparedness plans, what the state is required to do. Section 23, you'll notice this is the first section that has a yellow highlighted portion. There are 5 yellow highlighted portions. These, I think, it would behoove you as a chief executive official to read these sections in its entirety in here, because I can't write every little thing in there. There's a lot of stuff in there that you really, really should you should know. This is about your comprehensive emergency management plan. You're not required by law to have one, but if you do have one, which we know all of you do have an emergency action plan for your towns, your city, or village, these are the things that are required to be in that plan. So as you're reviewing your plans and stuff, it's good to go through this and do a little checkbox, yes, I have that, yes, I have that.
Okay, do you have to have the authority, or ask if there's an emergency, do you have to get the permission of the town or the mayor or somebody before you can act, or can you act on your own?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm nobody.
Well,
I
the
am-
county. No, right?
The chief executive official for the county is Kevin. as
Okay,
the
whatever,
chairman.
but I mean, you
Treat me
don't,
nice, Jim.
huh?
Treat me nice, Jim.
So,
Well, my point is, how bureaucratic is it? Do we have to go here, then go here, or can we just act?
You can't act. I think the mayor could act.
the mayor can.
But does the mayor have to talk to you, or can you act on your own?
No, the county can act and shut down the city if they want to.
Okay, that's, I'm just thinking if a
What
disaster
I
is
learned
spreading.
in school, you know, there's different various forms of government that have different things. And listening to some of the county executives there, they've had to do this, we've never had to do it here. I don't think Dan may have done it once.
3 times, that I can remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, but no, the city can take their own action. They don't need
Well,
permission.
my question really was just how bureaucratic, tied up with legal stuff, or can we just act and then ask for permission afterwards, or whatever?
It's not hard at all. If the city has an incident in which people are in peril, or they think they're gonna be in peril,
Right.
and the mayor wants to do a state of emergency, he can just do it.
Right.
If we had a situation in the ice storm of '08, I believe it was, and it hit Hague, and then it hit the northern end of the county as well. So Dan Belden was up there at the time, he called me up, we did a state of emergency for Hague. When we realized it also encompassed other portions, and I couldn't get a hold of the supervisors at that point in
That's what I'm-
time, I got a hold, actually, I don't even think it was Dan Belden back then, I think it was, Fred.
Fred Monroe was
He was the chairman at the time. Got a hold of him, explained what the situation was, and as the chairman of the board, he did a geographic location on the northern end of the county, a
Right.
state of
Okay,
emergency
well,
for that area.
That's basically what I'm, if it gets beyond where you can get a hold of somebody and all that stuff, you can just act as
It's
the
not
mayor.
bureaucratic, they have.
Right,
power.
okay, that's what I was, okay.
And our office will only suggest and make people aware of what's going on. It's truly up to the chief executive official to make that decision. Usually they err on the side of caution, because it's not gonna hurt anyone.
Right.
Okay. 23A talks about the registry of disabled persons, and it's recommended, that the county chief executive have, this registry, which we do in this county, we do have one. And if you have one, then you have to have these further requirements that you need to do, which we do a pretty good job of, fulfilling those requirements. 23B is talking about nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and how they need to have disaster preparedness plans. Those plans need to go through the county emergency management office, and it states some of the things that should be included or shall be included in those plans. Consistency among local disaster plans. This is talking about no part of any local disaster plan shall conflict with another part of a local preparedness plan, which is why I'm always requesting all of your plans go to my office so that I can review them and make sure everything is coordinated and that we're not all using the same X, Y, and Z, whatever resource that it is. And we do the same thing with the nursing homes and the assisted living facilities as well.
Supervisor Simpson, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanna go back on, says it's recommended that each county chief executive maintain a registry of disabled persons. Do we have that?
At the county level? Yeah.
We do?
Yeah, it's web-based, it's, if you go right to our website, the Office of Emergency Services, there's a link right there.
So as a town supervisor, I could get information off that list so that I would know, say, I have a local emergency? 'Cause that's one thing I thought about in town level.
You could, we limit it to those who are first responders, but I probably could give it to you. That being said, it's only gonna be as accurate as the day that you ask for the information.
Okay.
But on the flip side, you have a situation tomorrow and you need that information, well, I'll just dial right in and we'll get you everything in Horicon. So it's up to you, whatever you'd like.
Okay. Maybe I'll talk to you at a later date.
Okay.
Figure out how we can
Yeah, sure.
go with the database.
Yep. That being said, I also have brochures, so if anyone wants brochures for your town hall to encourage people to sign up on the registry, that would be wonderful too. Okay, the second yellow highlighted portion is the local state of emergency and local emergency orders by the chief executive. This is the one that we talk about all the time. I think everyone, for the most part, is pretty familiar with them. Usually your state of emergency will last for 30 days unless it's rescinded, and your executive or emergency orders will last 5 days unless they are terminated beforehand. We usually terminate them beforehand, and even if it does last the 30 days or the 5 days, we still do the paperwork because it looks cleaner. Subsection 3 of that talks about the other entities that need to have this. By law, it needs to be executed in quadruple, so that the office of the clerk of the governing body in which is doing that state of emergency or emergency orders, they get a copy of it. The office of the county clerk here at the county, the New York State Secretary of the state, and the State Office of Emergency Management get it. So to cover everyone, all the states of emergency and emergency orders go through our office so that we're in charge of giving them to the State Office of Emergency Management, to the county clerk's office, and to the Secretary of the State. We wait until the entire thing is done, and then we give everyone the whole package of information that they need, and then we usually give whatever town or village or whatever their copies as well. We keep a copy in our office because inevitably, whether it's 2 weeks, 2 years, or 2 decades later, somebody will call us up and say, I need a copy of that, and we tend to be the to-go people for them. Some other little highlights: the chief executive can request that the governor remove all of the sentenced inmates from institutions maintained by the county during a state of emergency. And they can also request of the governor to provide assistance if the disaster is beyond the capacity of the local government to meet adequately. Ron, that's kind of what you were asking about before. You can ask that. And when you're doing stuff, requests through the governor, usually our office is open, the emergency operating center within our office is open, or Brian and I are around. All those requests go through our office, so they're going through the proper channels. So the section 25, the third highlighted section. Use of local government resources in a disaster. There are 3 sections in here who specifically have to do with resources, and this is the first of the 3 of them. This is talking about you as the chief executive, that you're authorized to use any and all facilities, equipment, supplies, personnel of the political subdivision in such a manner as may be necessary. So that's your political subdivision. That being said, obviously Kevin is the chairman, the county resources would be his political subdivision. So as a chief executive, you can request and accept any assistance by the county chief executive, and you can accept and request any other political subdivision on the terms and conditions as may be mutually agreed to. So if you want to know more about the mutually agreed to, I would go to your legal counsel for that. Okay? 26 is talking about the coordination of the local disaster preparedness forces and the civil defense forces. So that chief executive official is coordinating those responses for a request made within the county, utilizing existing organizations' lines of authority and the comprehensive emergency management plan. So last month, this committee approved our annual update for the comprehensive emergency management plan for the county. In that, it details out the different roles within the county and who is going to do what. So when you're doing your own comprehensive emergency management plans, that's something that you might want to think about as well. Who's going to do what kind of resources that you have, how are you to use them in a disaster or other kind of emergency. 27 goes into your continuity of local government. I know some of you are thinking about having continuity plans. This is a good section to read, gives you some insight, some of the things you need to think about as far as that's concerned. State declaration of a disaster. This is specifically, what the governor is doing when he declares a state of emergency, he does have the authority to direct that other actions be taken by the chief executive officer pursuant to their authority under Section 24. Section 28 is talking about the recovery planning, and it's talking about a state disaster emergency when it's been declared that that local area needs to have a recovery plan, and if they don't have a recovery plan, it's because the legislative body in that municipality has determined that it's unnecessary or impractical. 29 is talking about the state agency assistance in a disaster emergency, where it's talking about the governor is directing state resources. 29 is about suspension of other laws. So the governor may, by executive order, temporarily suspend specific provisions of any statute, local law, ordinance, or order, rules, regulation, or parts thereof, or any agency during a state of disaster emergency. Thank you, before I lose my voice. I have such good employees. So if you're doing an executive order and you're going to suspend any of your local laws, this is when 29A comes into effect, okay? 29B is the use of disaster emergency response personnel in disasters. This is talking about the chief executive using the emergency manager director of the county to assist in the protection and preservation of human life and property by calling on personnel employed by or supporting the county as specified in the comprehensive emergency management plan. And that is all spelled out in our countywide plan of how we're going to get additional human beings to assist us doing whatever kind of disaster work we're doing. 29C and D both have to do with radiological stuff. It's preparedness in the report, so I didn't go into that a whole lot because we don't have those type facilities here in Warren County. 29E talks about the New York State Emergency Assistance Program. If the governor, he's allowed to issue a declaration if there's significant economic distress of a municipality because of a disaster that happened, he can enact other things because of that. 29G is the one of the other resource things. It's Emergency Management Assistance Compact. This is interstate. I don't remember how many states right now within the U.S. are part of this. There's quite a few of them. This allows mutual aid between states. So if we had our EOC open for an extended period of time and we needed extra bodies in it, and it was something that was catastrophic that was affecting most of New York State, we could ask the state to enact this and get qualified assistance, say from California or Ohio or somewhere else. 29H is the third one. It's the intrastate mutual aid program. This is within New York State. And this allows us to gather help without going directly through the state. This is a fairly new one. It's very lengthy, and you can see this is why it's one of the other ones that are highlighted. So that fire-related resources are not part of this. We have the New York State Fire Mobilization Mutual Aid Plan that's talked about in Section 209E of the General Municipal Law. So we don't count that. But anything else can go through the Emergency Management Director. This is a fairly long section. It's very detailed, very spelled out as far as how to do it. And one of the other things the state said is they were going to form a committee and come up with more directives. And they did about 2 years ago, I guess now. They formed a committee, and we have a whole packet of information of how we go about assisting other people or vice versa if we need assistance. It all goes through our office. But this is another good thing to read about. So I'll pick on our chairwoman for a second, or the town of Thurman. When we had the Memorial Day storms, we didn't have this at that point in time. But had we had this at that point in time, would have been able to utilize that if we wanted resources from Washington County or Essex County or someone else to come in, and we would have all the paperwork, we just fill the paperwork out and submit it at a later point in time.
Amy? There was a time when I worked for DEC and the Hadlock Pond blew out. And when I arrived on the scene driving down from Raybrook, there must have been 7 vans from various state and local agencies, you know, one was a communication van. So this will, in a way, this thing would help with that, but because for a long time, while we were on site, we didn't know who was in charge. You know, was it the town supervisor, was it the county? How would you see something like that happening again with our new plan? You're the supervisor in the town of Fort Ann. You get notice that the dam just blew out, and there's 55 homes in harm's way.
Well, it has nothing to do with this piece of legislation, but the use of incident command is federal regulation through the National Incident Management System. So ICS should be utilized at all incidents. That is going to steer someone in the right direction as far as who's in charge. And when you have a large multi-organizational response to a scene like that, it really should be utilizing unified command, which means you're going to have a group of people around a table, and it could be just saying law enforcement, fire, EMS. They're all going to be incident commanders. They're all going to be working together, coming up with one set of objectives, and then they're going to go to their various folks and carry out those objectives unified together. So then they're not fighting against each other, and they're not going in different directions. It's just a waste of resources if you don't do it that way.
So, I mean, but with this in mind, town supervisor is the first guy.
The town supervisor, this is a homeroom state, so the town supervisor has a lot of authority as far as the resources and, you know, what is going on. Yeah, most definitely. They should be at the table. A lot of times they're the ones who are writing out some kind of delegation of authority. You know, if I'm the town supervisor, I'm saying, Matt, you can do X, Y, and Z, but you can't do this, this, and this. So that's what you can do as a town supervisor. So I believe for the Hadlock Dam that the chairman of the Board of Supervisors at one point in time actually put something in writing of who was going to be in charge, what they were allowed to do and what they were not allowed to do. It was in writing because they wanted it to be perfectly clear for everybody.
In that instance, Ron, this is where 2 laws clash. Federal regulation says that the scene of any incident, the fire chief is in charge.
Right.
It's very simple. And that's the case. Now, in this particular case, once the incident went past the point of being a fire department response and now became a disaster, an emergency, now we had the town supervisor. Unfortunately, that particular day, the town supervisor was riding around in one car giving orders, and the fire chief was riding around in his truck giving orders. This is what you saw.
Yeah.
And it was a little difficult, and that's again where Amy states unified command. You have to get all the players to stand in one spot and decide this is what we're going to do. What happened there is the 6 or 7 communication trucks that you saw there, they were all there, but they couldn't talk to each other. So there was still a guy running from this truck to this truck to this truck. So again, unified command. This is why we desperately want anybody that's in this type of position to have the incident command training, to have the basic training. It is imperative so that you understand when somebody says, we're going to do incident command, there's the command post, everybody knows what we're talking about.
Anything else for Amy? All right, well, before we go today, I just want to, kind of on this subject, Amy did come to my town. I know she's gone to Soil and Water and gave a continuity of operations plan overview. Anybody that hasn't had one in their town, I'd highly recommend it. I will warn you that she pop quizzes you at the end, as we learn to our mortal peril in front of all of our 50 people. And while that might have been painful for some of the board, it had a really positive outcome. I've heard from several of the citizens. They get out, they walk. It's spring now, And, as they're walking, they're saying, well, gee, if there was a flood, what would we do? If we didn't have power, apparently that's the topic this week in Thurman, if we didn't have power for a week, what would we do? So, you know, having that at your board meeting, maybe your board picks up on it, maybe they don't, but your people certainly will, and it does get them thinking in the right direction as to what they would do if there was an issue. So I want to thank Amy for coming up. It had many benefits, and we look forward to having her again.
Thank you.
Anything else for committee today? Hearing nothing, motion to adjourn? Supervisor Montesi, second by Supervisor Gerard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
I'm gonna get you.